This episode contains rude words.
Hey everyone, this week I chat to Jade Miles. People will know her from Black Barn Farm, her podcast and book Future Steading, and she also has a new book coming out called Huddle. We chat all things community, working within permaculture framework. We talk a little bit about gardening and also how to balance our priorities between what we need, what the garden needs, what our community need. It was a really lovely chat. Jade is such an inspiring person. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Welcome to the Practical Permaculture Podcast, your weekly dose of gardening, intentional living, and all things permaculture, served with a side of fun and plenty of great conversations. I'm your host, Elise, and together we'll dig into practical tips, chat with experts, and explore ways to cultivate a more abundant, sustainable life. Let's get growing. Hello, everybody. Can you believe it is February? How is that possible? January is done and dusted, had all the silly season all over and done with, all the public holidays, and we are back into the swing of things. School's going back for those who are at school. Don't remind me. I think I'm going to cry my eyes out this week. My two little ones are leaving me and going to school. I feel abandoned. I want to keep homeschooling, feeling all the feels, trying to regulate my body and work through this because it was not expected. So I'm going to keep myself as distracted as possible. We have an intentional eco community here where we live. It's in McLean. And they are starting to write articles for the local newspaper, and they asked me to write this week's article. So I was sitting there at my computer thinking about what to write, and she asked me to talk about my experience in permaculture and how I got into it, and maybe give some tips and gardening tricks and that kind of thing. So I was sitting there kind of plotting out the timeline of how everything happened and how I came to learn permaculture. And it got me thinking about what permaculture is. And so lots of people think permaculture is just gardening, that it's a gardening technique like biodynamics or like syntropic farming or syntropic agriculture. So I think this year I really want to try and focus my efforts around maybe broadening people's minds as to what permaculture is and how anything can have the permaculture design system applied to it. So yes, it's used a lot in the garden, and it is a great resource for planning your garden. We talk about site sector analysis. We can take into all these considerations of things that affect our garden and affect our property perhaps, and our localized little environment that we have that we're growing in. But it can be used in a whole range of different applications. You can use it in big ways. So thinking about like our house design, we've considered where the sun is, how low the sun angle is in winter, how our deck will have to have a deciduous vine growing on it so that we get shade in summer and light in winter. But it can be used for all kinds of little things. You know, you brush your teeth in the morning. You can use permaculture to think about where that toothpaste comes from, how many steps in the supply chain it might take to get to you. You can investigate one thing in your house. Maybe it's an item of clothing or your lounge, and think about the impact that that may have had on the environment or the resources that it took to make that thing. And now that could be very overwhelming if you start just, thinking about all the ways that these things in your life have been created or made and the impact they have. And so that got me thinking about, where do we draw the line? We are building a house. So where do we draw the line on making sure that the choices we make are so highly intentional and aligned with what we do versus money, or versus how fast we need something done? For instance, I'm happy to research all the different paints in the world and talk about with my husband what we want to use. Do we want to use an eco paint, a low VOC paint? What are the implications of that? What Is it long wearing? All these kinds of things. Or our insulation. I'm happy to have those conversations and do a lot of research into insulation that's more eco-friendly. Do we go with wool? Is there a manufactured product that's really appropriate? Is there something here in Australia that we can buy that isn't made overseas and has all these kilometers of fossil fuels attached to it to get it here or to have it produced? There are lots of things we're considering in our build that will fit that profile or align with our values that are permaculture focused. However, I'm not building a mud brick house. I am building a house that is made out of steel, that is made in a factory. It is being clad in color bond. We've chosen a black color, not a light color, so that in winter we have that warming property, and also we get a lot of solar coming in, and also I think it looks better. So where do we draw the line as to what decisions we make in our life that are going to be convenient or cost less money, or maybe it just, for your context, it really suits you. I remember our permaculture teacher explaining why he chose to use weed matting in parts of his garden. Lots of people would say that that's not a very permaculture or sustainably made decision. You're putting all this plastic down to suppress the weeds, the fossil fuels it took to make that plastic, etc., etc. But when he explained it to us, he said the time it takes for me to weed that area and to mow that area and to maintain that area, the fossil fuels it takes him to also maintain that. He's got to use diesel or petrol in his whippersnipper or his mower. It then takes him away from other things. So decisions are highly contextual, and we're all going to have things in our life that might be not the most sustainable ecological design choice. We have iPhones, we drive cars, even petrol cars or diesel cars versus electric cars. There's always a trade-off. And so I think we need to not get so caught up in always doing the right thing or always making decisions that have to have that permaculture or environmental lens or decision making put over it, but also be really intentional about what you're not willing to compromise on. So have these things in your life that you're like, what, these are my hard and fasts. I'm going to do this. This is to me what makes a difference. It's manageable, it's doable, and I can continue doing it. One thing that I struggle with, and I don't know why, is composting. I find it really bloody hard to do it. I don't enjoy doing it. I don't enjoy taking the caddy out. It might seem like a really small thing to people, and maybe it is a little bit lazy, but in my season of life, I'm finding it really tricky. So that's something I really want to work on this year, creating compost, creating really good habits about taking my caddy out, about using our bokashi bins in the correct way. So we have two and we alternate between them, and making that more easeful in my life. And there are some things that I'm like, what? I just need this to be easy. And I feel like the kids' school lunch boxes are going to be one of those things. I've made conscious decisions about the type of drink bottles and the type of lunchbox they have. But are they going to be completely waste-free and not have packaged food in them? Probably not, because this is my first year of mumming schooling. I don't have the capacity to do all the things and make everything from scratch. And so that's one thing that I'm going to let slide and actually give myself grace around that. So I just thought it was interesting. What things maybe can you set in stone that are your hard and fast? I'm going to do this because it means a lot, because it is a habit that I can form. And what things are you willing to let slide? Because we can't do it all. We can't be perfect. And so I think being intentional about the things that we do choose to do, that we make our life easier by saying yes to some things and no to other things, might mean that the things we're saying yes to are way more sustainable, and we can do those a lot more long term and commit to them. And we know that permaculture teaches that it's slow and small solutions, and that just doing one thing at a time is worth doing. So don't write your actions off thinking, oh no, there's no point, I'm not going to do it, it's not going to make a difference. Me as one human, I can't make a difference. It's not true. Just do the things, do them well, commit to a couple of things, maybe try and pick up a new habit if you can, if you have capacity for that, and give yourself grace for the things that you can't do and can't take on. Well, that's enough from me. I'd love to know your thoughts about my little rant about permaculture and how we can implement it and what we say yes and no to. So if you want to jump in our little Facebook group, We have a community on there and we do chat about things like this. Before we get too far into the show, I just wanted to say a big thanks to Elle from Australian Medicinal Herbs. She is sponsoring the podcast this season so we can keep it going. I've known Elle for about a year and using her products almost as long as that. Particularly, I'm finding the lemon balm tincture super helpful. The lemon balm tincture offers a natural way to support overall well-being. So I use it for its calming properties. I have started using it after a night shift to help me get to sleep. So it helps promote restful sleep. And it also is a calm and balancing herb. So I use it. I'm feeling a bit anxious, and I think I'll definitely be using it when Addie goes to school just to zen me out a little bit. But it also helps digestive discomfort and helps with healthy digestion. And it's also a good herb for immune support. So it's a bit of an all-rounder, really. I love that all her herbs are grown locally. I know they're not shipped in from overseas, and I know that they're all grown organically. So that really aligns with me. I've been using the alcohol-based tinctures because of their potency, but the kids also use the glycerin-based tinctures. It's a bit milder and it has like a sweet taste, so the kids don't mind taking it. If you want to learn more about what she does, you can jump on her website. She has so much information on there. There's also a free download that you can access to learn more about all the different herbs and products that she offers. So let's get into our chat with Jade Miles. Enjoy!
Hello, I'm wonderful on this sunny day. We had 16 mils of rain yesterday, so today feels like it's all been washed and is ready for a new day of summer.
Oh, lovely. We are desperately needing rain. We've just got like dust everywhere. We're building a house, so it's like extra dusty and bare where we are.
Yeah, and it's the time of year, isn't it, where everything is just a little bit in the back of your throat.
Yeah. So we've got Jade Miles on today. For those who don't know who you are, I'm sure they've heard of your name, or at least your book and podcast, Future Steading, or maybe your farm, Black Barn Farm. But can you just tell us a bit about yourself for people who may not have heard of you before?
Yeah, I imagine there's lots who haven't heard of me.
No.
No, you just feel like you're just a normal person doing your normal everyday loads of washing and weeding and dogs and milking of goats, and often exasperated parenting. I am in northeast Victoria on Palangang Meadow country, not far from Beechworth, and we're in a little town or on a little plateau called the Stanley Plateau, and we've been here for about 25 years, but we've been on this particular property that is Black Barn Farm for the last 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
And really our journey on the plateau since we were in our very early 20s has been one of deepening discovery around the potency and power of food systems and community and food production. And I guess rewilding and reconnecting to the natural world through the seasons and through ritual and through the people that we build our relationships with and through the natural world that we build our relationship with through things like sit spots and meditation and, bushwalking and just being outside rain, hail and shine. So I grew up as a permy kid in Gippsland. My dad and my mum were really early adopters of permaculture as a concept, and I think they quite liked the idea of being a little bit anti-authoritarian and really taking full responsibility for their own actions and the way they impacted the world around them, both human and non-human impact.
Yeah.
And I think as a kid that made me feel a bit weird because I spent a lot of time doing things very differently to everybody else around me, and we spent a lot of time in the bush with my dad, who is an artist, and so my schooling was a bit abstract and my family environment was a bit abstract, but I was also really lucky to grow up in the same community that all of my mum and my dad's brothers and sisters and parents were. So I had a huge community around me, and what we didn't grow ourselves, we were able to trade or swap out and share with the people around us. So I've sort of fought it a bit in my teenage years, but very much lent straight back into it the minute I could in my very early 20s or late teens even. I was starting to grow veggies in my share house in Melbourne while I was at uni, and really have always known that if my hands are in the dirt and I'm connected to the seasons or the cyclical nature of the rhythm of the year, then I'm okay. My mental health is okay, my physical health is okay, and I feel like I'm connected to a community.
I think a lot of people can resonate with that you know, once you get out there and you're actually doing the thing and, you know, you're in the environment, it has that effect on you, doesn't it? I first read your book and started listening to your podcast, and I love the episode that you did with about enoughness in house design with Jane Hiller. Yes, I loved it so much, and it's very relevant to us at the moment because we've just bought a property, and so we are regenning it because they've just cleared all the land in a large lot subdivision. We're the only block with gum trees left. Everybody else has flattened everything down. But yeah, in designing our house, it was very intentional, and listening to that episode definitely made me take stock and really plan when we were going through that phase. And then when I learned you were having your new book come out, Huddle, I got even more excited because we've moved to a brand new area. So I feel like it's really going to help me, because one of my big goals for this year is to create community. We've been traveling on the road for 2 years, so we've kind of lost touch with a lot of our school friends and friends from where we used to live. And yeah, we're just kind of trying to embed ourselves in this new community. And I think sometimes it can be really hard because you get stuck in your little rut or your life and your little bubble, and you're kind of on that you know, family routine where, you know, you breakfast and you go to school and you have all these things to tick off your list, and you don't make space for that in your life. So I'm so interested in reading it and learning more about your thought process around community.
And I think also it not only does it require a bravery and a courageousness to kind of step outside of that comfort zone that you just so eloquently explained, but it actually takes a whole lot of time that our society doesn't necessarily give us the scope to have anymore. And it's not linear. So that's something that we've sort of become used to because we feel like we're in control of things. But in fact, we're not in control of these organic organisms at all. And a community relationship is very much an heartbeat of its own, and so it ebbs and flows, and it moves at pace, and then it slows right down, and then, you know, you kind of go backwards for a bit, and I think also it requires an enormous amount of patience and capability for truly deep listening and adaptation. And so none of those things are really skills that are highlighted and encouraged. Certainly not in mainstream narrative, but it also can be really easy to be put off if the first or the second or the third concept that you put forward to the newly emerging community around you doesn't go with flying colours. And it's really important to remember that some things take time. And a beautiful human in my world, my brother-in-law's dad, said to me years ago when I was starting the Beechworth Food Co-op, just keep in mind that community only moves at the speed of trust, and you can't make it move any faster. And even if you think you are because you're at the front leading and setting the pace, all you're doing is leaving people behind. And so I think it's really important to remember that a true community evolves through experience and at the pace that it's ready for. So that requires, you know, joint knowledge, capability, and joint learning and joint discovery, and lots of sort of organic relationships to build trust, or opportunities to build trust.
We've spoken about it on the podcast before, but I'm on a local community Facebook group that's connected to a community garden, and someone had their knickers in a knot because someone not connected to the community garden came and took a pumpkin. And so we had this big discussion about, is it okay to take a pumpkin if you really need it, and how do we approach it? And then as the thread kept going, it was like, I don't care if you took my pumpkin and you've cut it up, like bring the cut up pieces back. And it was just this whole thing. And I think it's really interesting because, especially from a permaculture perspective, when you're giving to those in need, and we come from a place of abundance and enoughness, and we want to support the community. And obviously these people want to be part of community because they're in a community garden, and those nuances of community can be really tricky, and like you said, having difficult discussions and patience, and I think also understanding where that person comes from. Their mindset is from a place of maybe lack, or they've grown up in a place where they might not have had enough food, and so how do we kind of bring all these perspectives together, and is it through rules, is it through mutual understanding, how do we navigate those tricky things in community and relationship?
I interviewed Casper to Kyle on the podcast, and he gave some really beautiful examples of how complex community development can be, and how sometimes it works to have a whole set of really hard and fast rules that lock people into a mutual obligation, but sometimes it works to have no rules at all and just to allow people to flow through like a river. But he said when you really want an intentional and active relationship, a beautiful way around that is to create a relationship covenant, which is a dually created or co-created statement of your reason to be in that relationship. And it comes out of your head and totally into your heart. It's not a contract in terms of it being a black and white piece of paper that everybody signs and you then have that contractual obligation, but it's a relationship obligation. So we're just in the process here at Black Barn Farm of creating relationship covenants with our farm collective partners. And in my day job at Sustainable Table, we're just in the process of creating relationship covenants with everybody who contributes to the work that Sustainable Table does, not because they're contractually obligated, but because they genuinely and deeply want to be working collectively on a unified purpose and for unified outcomes for growth and change.
I love that. I love that. I'll have to find that episode and listen to it, because it's something that I'm starting to kind of get involved with more in community things, and it's not something I've really had to stretch into before, so it's definitely a skill that I'm practicing.
And will forever be. I think we all have
for sure
so much to learn when it comes to this evolution and this stepping back into to sort of village existence, or a village mindset of existence where mutual obligation is critical.
Yeah. And I think as well, I'm a big believer in the people that come into your life come in for a reason, and often it's to hold a mirror up to what you need to learn about yourself. And so when you're coming up against those blocks and resistance, it's so that you can grow and so that you can reflect on what maybe they're trying to hold up to you and show you and present to you. So I think if you come at it from that kind of mindset too, you can learn a lot from being in community.
Oh, even just being in your own household with your children. I've let my kiddos do that to me, and have done since they were very, very little. They've really challenged my sense of who I am and what is right and what is wrong and what my values are and what you hold on to tightly and what you need to release a little on. I think it's really important to be gracious and humble enough to take a deep breath and realise that your way isn't the only way, and that
I'm feeling that, where I was dead set on homeschooling, and my little one about 4 or 5 days ago decided that she wants to go to school next year, and it was just came out of the blue. Really, I have to sit with that because I'm like, nope, we're going to homeschool, and it's something that she really wants. So we're looking into it, and I'm having to stop and release control a little bit and explore that with her. So I feel that very deeply at the moment.
It's a nice, safe way to learn on the inside of your own space before you then go out into community and experiment with people that have come from very different backgrounds or ways of being.
And you touched on seasonality at properties and it being a way for you to connect, and it's like a mental health thing for you and physical health. I often get torn as well, if I have the opportunity to go to a community event, because I'm a bit of an introvert, that I kind of make excuses too, like, oh no, I just need to garden and I need to be here and this is really good for my mental health, or this particular thing needs doing. So how do you, especially running a business and a farm, balance that of wanting space? And I think a lot of people who homestead or buy property want to be self-sufficient, and as a movement towards more community sufficiency and that changing mindset. But yeah, I guess balancing that want as an introvert or wanting to be in nature and having those pulls, and then also being in community, and how you balance those two things.
I think that is a never-ending balancing act. I think, though, it requires brutal honesty, not only with yourself and really being able to hear what it is you need. Are you just putting an excuse on the table and actually probably being a bit socially lazy, or trying to avoid someone, or, trying to avoid some level of mutual obligation, or are you genuinely needing recoupment, like solo recoupment? And I think when you've got really good daily rhythms within your household, or seasonal rhythms, daily and weekly and monthly and annually, I think, when you've got those rhythms and those practices in your own sphere, it makes a real difference, because you probably can just take a big deep breath and go to that community Christmas gathering that you didn't really feel like going to, because when you come home you can meditate for half an hour, or you can go for a walk in the bush, or you can get up 10 minutes earlier tomorrow morning and do some kind of breathing exercise as the sun rises, or you've got those tools at your disposal that you can tap into that sort of balance out the things that do come with a sense of community obligation. I don't think I'm actually quite introverted, and people don't assume that, because I'm public speaking quite a lot, and because I run a team and we've got woofers and I'm on lots of committees and different community things. People assume that I sort of thrive on all of that external input, but actually it drives me to a place of exhaustion. And so I need a lot of downtime, and I need a lot of time on my own without noise. So I actually live a really quiet life. It's a really busy life, really, really busy. And my days, it's not unusual for them to start at 5 and finish super late. And I don't waste a lot of time. There's not a lot of scrolling, and we've only just recently, for the first time, got a streaming service to watch a particular series that was recommended to us. But otherwise, we kind of don't do a lot of that. And my life isn't noisy. I don't live in a city, and I don't answer all of my phone calls, and I don't spend a lot of time listening to the noise of the outside world. I sort of push all of that away, and I shun that. And I don't really even listen to other podcasts, and I don't listen to music. I'm kind of outside listening to birdsong, or in the bush walking, or in the paddock weeding, or mulching, or if I don't have to be behind a screen, which I do have to be for work, I'm categorically not behind a screen. And if I don't have to take in somebody else's narrative about the way society needs to sit, then I tend not to. And so that actually gives a huge amount of quiet and a huge amount of calm to my sense of being.
And I guess listening to those feedback loops too, when you go to that event, or when you do these things, you might dread it, but then if it really does fill your cup, then taking that feedback loop and go, oh, I was just being a bit silly. Like, I was feeling burnt out, but I'm so glad I saw that person, or I really needed that hug, or whatever the thing is that, filled your cup in that moment.
I think there's a performative thing too. And I don't know if you have experienced this, or if, if others have, but you sort of learn to perform to be a certain way, and you learn that really early. And as you get a bit older, you start to realize that you actually don't have to perform, and you actually don't have to sit central to whatever the activity is that's happening. You can sit really quietly in the back of the group and still interact, and still be present, and still observe and participate, but you don't actually have to perform. And so when you learn to drop that show, which I'm still learning, I use that performative nature to really protect me as a kid growing up that moved schools a lot and was in and out of a school structure. I learnt to just put on a show and make sure that people liked me, and make sure that I could still sort of develop friends, but it hasn't served me very well. And so I've learnt as I've got older to just let that go, and know that no one's actually looking at me, and I don't have to be a certain way.
Yeah. How do you, your book shares skills and resources for building togetherness and community. what do you recommend when people are first trying to find their tribe or community, and like what's a good first step for somebody who might want to aim to do that?
I would definitely say that's the very first step, is to find your people. And even if you just find one of those peoples, you are on the way. I think it's to be really still and to be really sure of who it is that you're looking for, and what sort of traits you're looking for. Do you want it to be high energy? Do you want it to be really creative? Do you want it to be soulful? Do you want it to be still and calming? Do you want it to be, a bit passive? Do you want it to be really active? I think it's about being really still and really sure of what it is that you think you're looking for, and then really comfortable to realize that what you thought was sure maybe has evolved, or because it's not everybody's cup of tea to get on a committee, or everybody's cup of tea to join a food co-op or a school parent association, or a seed swapping group. So maybe it's not that you want it to be that active. I would say that there is so much more in the relational than a screen relationship. So I would say if you've got the opportunity to do it in person, then do it. Like, you don't have to host potluck dinners, but if you think that's the kind of thing that you might like to do, then just invite 3 people or 2 people and just see what that looks like. I would say start small, start with one thing, and be really comfortable to adapt and evolve what it is that is filling your cup, and be exploratory. Give yourself a year to say, I'm just exploring what sort of community it is that I need to belong to. I had a really active community when my kiddos were little, and we were away every second weekend, and we hosted parties all the time at our place, and we had people calling in 5 and 10 times a day. It was just a flat out social period of our life. And at the time I loved it, or I thought I did. And then when we moved out to the farm about 9 years ago, I really revelled in just the geographic distance from town. Meant that we didn't have so many people here, and we just got forgotten to be invited to things, which sort of suited us because we really had a period of introversion after a decade of really busy hustle bustle little kid stage, and it's been really lovely to kind of come back out the other side with a totally different social group, totally different group of organisations that we support and throw our weight behind, and committees that we sit on. Both of our work arenas has changed, and I think we're getting to a point where we're much more comfortable to kind of dip in and dip out and not feel like the weight of the world is being carried on the efforts of your daily activities. There are many, many people doing things. And so
I think remembering there's like different seasons of your life for, busyness and, investing that social energy into your children's life and establishing different things. And I have a yes and personality, so if somebody asks me to do something, I'm like, yes, and let's do this. And it's often to my detriment. Like I need to get better at setting boundaries, because I would just say yes to contributing and being a part of things, and I think that's where my dread comes from. I've said yes but not intentionally, and full body saying yes, and I really need to just stop and pause, I think, before I throw my hat in the ring to things, because I think that's where my social
is really important. I think being really still and really listening to the somatic response of something. Is it the ego asking you to say yes, or is it the body that's fully supporting you? So just sitting and being really still and really feeling and listening to your body's response is a hard lesson to learn, but it's sort of the first place to begin, so that you don't end up with chronic burnout.
Yeah, I do the interact and not observe part of the interact and observe. I just do. Oops, stop, Elise.
I'm in there. I'm doing it.
Yeah. Oh man.
And that's that. I've had this conversation before about the doing and the being, or the thinking, the being and the doing, and that's the head, heart and hands. And for some people, they're more inclined to be the hands doing.
Yes.
Some people, they're more inclined to be the head thinking, and some people are more inclined to sort of be and sit in their heart for a while. And some people have got a better balance of all three, and we're all different, and we all require kind of different ways of navigating the world, but I know I require a fairly solid dose of all three in pretty equal measure. And so that's taken me years and years to learn, that I thought I was just a doer, but because I actually didn't think I had intellectual capability, and I've sort of navigated through life, I've realised that maybe it just doesn't look like it does in a classroom to be considered intellectual. So actually I can use my mind, and I thrive when I use my mind. It just is a slightly different picture to the one that was painted when I was at school. And
that's really interesting, that balance of, what'd you say, head, heart, hands?
head, heart, and hands, which is sort of thinking, being, and doing.
Yeah, and I guess, the balance of that. I'd like to think about that more. That's really interesting to put it that way. And I think there's such a glorification of being busy in our culture. And, you know, like you said, you've blocked out the noise in the media and what, you know, cultural norms might be by being still and being more isolated. But if you are in that constant stream of being fed that online and even on the news, and that glorification of busyness, and not being so intentional with your busyness is,
I think that's sort of outward facing achievement. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's exhausting, and it doesn't serve any of us, and it doesn't allow any of us to actually look into our bodies and practice deep regeneration for the self. And you know, without being self-regenerating, it's really difficult to then contribute to others. And I think it's really important to make sure that you've got a full cup that is well, truly well and balanced, and really comfortable to set boundaries, and, you know, comfortable to take time out and let that ebb and flow that happens with the seasons and happens with different stages of life really dominate.
When I was reading about the book Huddle, you touched on how different places geographically and lifestyles have built community into the way they live. And I think, coming from an immigrant background, so my parents are first generation Australians, all of my grandparents immigrated from Europe, from Croatia, and they live, you know, in Croatia and Italy, in these places where they have squares, and it is so built into the way they live and their community, and they have times during the day where they come together. And I feel like just in that one generation, we've lost so much of that. And then you look back further into how these cultures operated in their day-to-day life. What do you think we can learn from these cultures? And do you think we've lost a lot of that? And how do we, I guess, come back to it? And is that important in your eyes?
Yeah, I think it's critical. I think it's heartbreaking that the abundance of fossil fuels has enabled us to create our own little closed, fenced worlds where we don't have to interact with each other, because there's no need for reliance on one another. But in fact, you know, humankind is categorically reliant on one another. We are a relational, custodial species that need to be connected not only to other humans, but, you know, other elements of the natural world in this deeply complex web that we exist in. And I think it's really kind of heartbreaking to know that we can now walk into our quarter-acre block and shut our door and shut the rest of the world out and make things like a might by using money rather than relationships or compromise or conversation. And so I think it is really key. And I think if you've got any ounce of ancestral heritage that leads you to experiences like the one that you just mentioned, then tap into that, unpack that, and learn how to recreate similar things in your own environment, even if it's with your next door neighbour and you have a cup of tea. My next door neighbour here, during COVID, every day we would go out in our pyjamas early morning. We would sit on a deck chair in our paddocks. It's the paddock that sits between our two houses, and have a cup of tea. And we don't maintain it quite as much as we were during COVID, but we definitely know that there is an ability to sit in your pyjamas in a paddock and have a cuppa if you want to on a regular basis if you feel you need it. And I think, you know, a potluck dinner, I think having rituals that are really considered and are more than just a habit, are actually intentional and have values wrapped into them, I think require some effort, and I think they will be multi-generationally recreated. I don't think in one generation, even though it only took us one generation to lose it, I think it will require more than one generation to rebuild it. And I sadly also think that as long as we do have access to this abundance of fossil fuels that makes life cheap and vanilla and, door closable, then it makes it very difficult to try and place value on the things that don't have a monetary value and don't have an external gratification value, but they have a deeply internal rewarding value.
Yeah.
And I think that's about the individuals that you put around you knowing what their enough is and having similar values.
Yeah.
I think it makes it easier when the people, I remember another one of our farming friends. Most of our friends now are regen farmers because it's just sort of become our whole world. And I remember one of them saying, imagine having so much money that you didn't quite know what to do with it, or that you spent it on, superfluous things. They need to farm. If they farmed, they wouldn't have so much money.
Yeah.
But two, they would really think about exactly where every single dollar goes, because you sort of do. You don't want a whole lot, because what you want is to have your hands in the dirt and to be outside in the sunshine.
Yeah.
That's why you're doing it, and you want to be connected to the world that you're stewarding. So your why has been fulfilled, but then there's a few sort of basic fundamental cash needs that you have, and so you inevitably have a whole lot less money, which means you have a whole lot less fat. So you really think about where you put the cash that you do have. Yeah.
We play that game. We sit and have a cup of tea and we think, oh, if we won the lotto, what would we spend our money on? And I said to my husband, I really don't know. Like, I'm clueless. I would have no idea how to even try and spend that much money. Like, I'd buy more seeds. There's only so many seed packets I can own. So I honestly don't know where the money would go.
And there is that beautiful saying that you're only as strong as the community that you're in. And would money provide some solutions for that community that you're in? I know there's definitely some examples in my world where there's some really incredible humans that have just had a pretty strong run of bad luck, and a little bit of money would be helpful for them, but not much probably, because what they really want are more regular potluck dinners and morning walks in the bush, and women's circles and naked swims in dams, and that's actually what people are craving, and that we're deeply,
I think when you touched on COVID, a lot of people came to that realization of what truly mattered and what they actually wanted to spend their time doing. But I think we've so quickly forgotten it already.
Yeah, well, I guess when you absorb mainstream media with pretty singular growth paradigm messaging, it's really difficult to maintain your fortitude around the values that truly speak to what it is we need as a species. But I think that's a pretty important piece in it all. If you can turn that all off and shut all that down and just be a whole lot more still and a whole lot more content with a whole lot less, knowing that we've really only got access to a certain amount of things if we wish to be fair. It comes back to that earth care, people care, fair share thing.
Yeah.
And if you only take what is fair, then it leaves a whole lot more for the others, and that then allows you to be in a community that's as strong as everybody. So I think you're right. It's hard because the narrative is so dominant and so loud,
so prevalent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to wrap everything up, the final question is, if you had to give one piece of advice for someone who's starting out on the journey of finding community, what would it be?
Be kind to yourself and start with compassion and empathy for you, and lead with love, because I think when you lead with kindness and with love, you can only but create community.
Oh, so special. I'm so looking forward to your book coming out. We'll have to put all the details. And you're doing a big book tour too, aren't you?
Yes, I should be more organised on it than I am, but we've got puppies at the moment, and they are and I haven't had a lot of time for the garden for the last couple of months, so I've been stuck in over the last few days. I've just been cleaning my nails as I've been sitting here talking to you. They're filthy. There is a book tour, so there will be an Australian book tour and there will be a UK book tour. I potentially will do some time in the States as well, which is where I spend a lot of time with the Future Steading book. But I'll just have to see how that pans out with all the other moving parts in
So
life.
exciting. Well, I will put all the details in the show notes for anybody wanting to learn more about what you do, listen to the podcast, or connect with you around concepts of community.
Thank you. Enjoy your beautiful day.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your time.